Hi, welcome to Odyssey of the Mind coaching tips. Today I'm going to give you a brief introduction of Odyssey of the Mind and give you some background so you can make the critical decision of whether you plan on coaching an Odyssey of the Mind team. I quickly want to go over what you can expect from this presentation. I'm going to answer some common questions that have cropped up over the years as I've been working with Odyssey of the Mind coaches. First, I'm going to talk about what Odyssey of the Mind is. This is a great information for those of you that have never heard of the program before. Then I'm going to go into the specific problems and what the problems look like in Odyssey of the Mind. Basically, what do the kids have to do? I'm going to then talk about the responsibilities of a coach. If you choose to coach, what's expected of you? I'll go over a typical competition day, give you some information on the time you have to decide on whether you want to coach, and then point you in the right direction in case you want to find out even more. So first, I always like to talk about what is Odyssey of the Mind. If you've never heard of Odyssey of the Mind, it's a creative problem-solving club. Teams of 7 students and 1 to 2 coaches are given all sorts of problems, and they have to find creative solutions for these problems. There are 3 scored elements of Odyssey of the Mind, and I'm going to go over all 3 in some detail. The first is long-term. And if you've ever seen an Odyssey of the Mind video or been to a competition, then you've gotten to experience this portion of Odyssey of the Mind. The teams of 7 students have to come together to create an 8-minute skit. They must build all the props, all the costumes, write the script themselves, and they have to put on elaborate performances, solving all sorts of intricate little problems. I'm just going to go over the last 3 problems that I coached, and if you look in the far right, you can see pictures of all 3 of these problems. In the top right-hand corner, this was a team I coached in the classics problem. They had to build a replica of a historical monument. They chose to build the Inuyama Castle from Japan. They also had to have characters perform a choreographed song and dance. They had to have artwork that was stolen and then incorporated into their monument. And all of this in 8 minutes. If you look in the center one, this is a team I coached 2 years ago. These students had to have characters that were afraid of something. Then these characters went and visited whatever they were afraid of and sent back a message basically saying that it was okay. This team decided to do a mishmash of Dr. Seuss and the Hunger Games. So their characters, Cat in the Hatness, Heimgrinch, Sneetcha, Primdy-Loo-Hoo, were the ones that went out into the world and sent back a message saying everything was okay. This bottom picture was a team I coached last year. These students had to create a silent movie. So my very creative students came up with the concept of having name brand food items that were rebelling against an evil store owner who was putting store brands in front of them. They had characters like Ben and Jerry, Salt and Peppa, Tony the Tiger, and even the Rotten Tomato as their film critic. Now, if you had gone and seen other students perform in these 3 problems, you would have seen completely different solutions. Each problem has requirements, but the solutions they come up with are individual and very unique to the team itself. The next scored element of Odyssey of the Mind, which you probably haven't seen, is spontaneous. Now, students, when they go into spontaneous, they don't get to prepare. They go into a room and the judges give them a problem on the spot. This may be a verbal problem. They may have to, tell different kinds of lights, all right? And they get scored on the creativity of their answers. Or they may have a hands-on problem. They may have to build the tallest structure they can out of spaghetti, noodles, and mailing labels. Each problem is different, and the students have no clue what kind of problem or the problem itself until they walk into the room. Now, you can practice spontaneous problems ahead of time so that students get a feel for it and know how to encounter lots of different problems, but again, they won't know the problem until they walk into the room. The third element is style. Students are scored on the style of their performance. Now, this could be the artistic quality or creativity or humor, and this is a great place for students and teams to really play on their strengths and find things that make their team unique and score those elements for style. Now, one of the things that makes Odyssey of the Mind unique is outside assistance. So basically what this means that all adults and anybody that's not on their team is forbidden from helping. You get docked tremendously for it. The students have to do everything. They have to come up with the ideas. If something doesn't work, they have to find solutions. They have to make decisions themselves. They have to execute. If they have to cut a board, they have to learn how to cut the board. They can't have someone else do it for them. This is one of the things about Odyssey of the Mind that is tremendous. It truly teaches students to solve their own problems, to figure things out, how to be independent, something that, all of our students need. Which leads me to the benefits for students of Odyssey of the Mind. It teaches them this incredible independence. They walk out of Odyssey of the Mind confident that they can do just about anything. I did Odyssey of the Mind as a kid, and I can tell you that this lesson is the single best thing I learned in school. It also teaches kids leadership skills and teamwork and some really practical building things. One of my students walked away from Odyssey being able to draw tremendously. She learned how to draw through Odyssey. Another young man had never built something in his life, and he put together a table. So each Odyssey of the Mind team learns different things and gets different benefits, but all of them learn how to work together and how to solve their own problems. If you need more information about Odyssey of the Mind in general, I recommend you check out their website. There's a link to it on my presentation. Especially if you've never been to Odyssey of the Mind or seen Odyssey of the Mind, this is a great resource for you. Although I will tell you that most parents and teams and coaches say after their first competition, you had to see it to understand it. If you look at the bottom of all my slides, you can always go back or forward or to the table of contents if you need to reassess. So what are the problems? This comes down to the next question I get most often. There are some characteristics of all the problems. All the problems require an 8-minute solution. So all the problems have the kids write a script, build props, make their own costumes, and perform in the skit. There are 5 unique problem categories, and this may help you as you go into coach and your student ends up picking their problem, decide which one's most appealing for them. So problem 1 is the vehicle problem. Students have to build a vehicle. Sometimes it's a vehicle that a student actually rides in. Sometimes they're smaller vehicles, almost like remote control cars. They're often scored on how they run, the creativity of the mechanics that makes it run. All right, but this is one of those really hands-on build problems. Problem 2 is similar. It's a technical problem. Students will have to build a vehicle, but they'll have to build mechanisms that do something. Last year's problem, they had to build devices that were powered by rubber bands. In the past, students have had to build Rube Goldberg machines, musical instruments, all sorts of different things. Problem 3 is the classics problem. It's really performance-based, so most of the points come from the performance itself. But in the classics problem, they have to address some historical or classic or literature element. So one year, they had to rewrite a Shakespearean classic. Another year, they had to build a historical monument. Problem 4 is the balsa problem. This one's probably the most unique. Students have to put together structures out of balsa wood, very lightweight, very small structures that can hold hundreds and hundreds of pounds. The ones at World Finals last year held 1,300 pounds. Each year the problem's a little different, but that's kind of the gist of it, is they have to build these structures to hold weight. The last problem, problem 5, is really just performance-based. Often there's a humorous element, but most of the points come in the presentation, the characters, the backdrops, the costumes. So it's all about the 8-minute performance. These scoring elements get kind of detailed. I'm going to go over them in just 1 second, but each one has its own scoring elements. So sometimes they're scored on a character's performance or the visual representation, and the technical problems really on the functionality of their mechanisms. If you're looking for some basic guidelines, Odyssey of the Mind every year does print a program guide. So this gives you some overview of all the problems. It talks about some of the cost limits and some things that are exempt and you can do differently, and the measurements and the space they're given to perform. This is a great place for you to go to, especially if you've never done Odyssey. It gives you even some more guidelines. So I'm going to show you a typical problem here, and this is actually problem number 2 from last year. This is the rubber band problem I was referencing. So when you look at a problem, it's going to tell you what the problem is. The problem is to design, build, and use devices that are powered by rubber bands to complete tasks. It tells you what the creative emphasis is, where most of the points are going to be. This one, if you look, also has a mysterious engineer character and the spirit of the problem. As the problem continues, it goes into really a lot of detail on the task. You can see this rubber band sample. It tells you the thickness and length of the rubber band, the max thickness and max length. Also goes into the tasks that the devices have to do, talks a little bit about the character, gives you a lot of detail. And finally, I just want to show you what the scoring elements look like. So this is just a sample. Again, this is last year's problem, but you can see kind of where their points go in. And in a technical problem, you're going to get a lot of points for successful task completion or the risk-taking of the design, all right? But you're also going to get scored on the overall performance. Now, this may look really detailed, but I want to show it to you now so that when your problem comes out, you know that you're going to get this detailed of elements. And you can really help students, guide them towards the tasks and the things that are going to get them the most points. Which leads in, which is, what does the coach do? This is a question I get you asked every year, and I really want to make sure you understand the role of the coach, because with outside assistance, you can't give ideas. You can't build. You can't cut the board. You can't do their face paint. So what can you do? And I'd say the biggest thing that you can do is ask questions. There is an art to asking the right questions. Sometimes I'll ask my students, did you ask your teammates about that? Well, what do you think would make the most impact? Why would you have it that way? What made you decide to orient the wheels vertically? And by asking questions, you get them to think through their process and sometimes come up with their very own solutions. What you can also do is help the team set their goals. So middle schoolers in particular tend to not see the big picture. And so you as their coach, you see the big picture. And you can help them set realistic goals and hold them to their deadlines. And this will help them be successful. Also keep them on task. You really want to make sure that the team doesn't get distracted, or, if some conflicts come up within the team, that you're there to help them resolve and mediate their problems. Ultimately, with 13 and 14-year-olds, you're going to have to get them supplies. And some of these tend to be kind of outlandish. So we went through a phase where we were asking everyone for shoe boxes and then, Baskin-Robbins containers or Ben and Jerry's containers. And so, each team has different things that they need. But because our students don't have cars, you're going to have to either facilitate asking parents to get supplies or get them yourself. And ultimately, you will have to plan spontaneous practice. So you can plan spontaneous practice for them, and you'll have to, so that they can practice this thing that they'll have to do on the spot on competition day. And the more and the different types of problems they see, the better off they're going to be with spontaneous. So I always get asked, what is competition like? And I'll tell you, you probably won't really understand until you get there, but it's a lot of fun. It is an early morning, late night type of day, especially for regionals. You'll get there very early in the morning, start unloading your props, and be there late in the night after the awards ceremony. You'll actually have 2 competition times, so you'll get a separate time for spontaneous and for long term. So you'll actually have to go to 2 different places to perform. Spontaneous is pretty easy. You really just show up. You have to be there a little early. It doesn't usually last longer than 20 minutes. Long term is a little different. You need to get all of your props and costumed people, makeup done, hair done, all of that to performance about 20 minutes before you're supposed to go on. And of course, your performance will only last about 8 minutes, and then you'll have to put all the props and stuff back. Just one real quick thing about competition, outside assistance applies here too. So you can't do their face paint or their hair. They have to do each other's and really work together for that solution. I recommend that if you go to competition, you're going to see hundreds of teams there and go to as many performances as possible. Even if your team doesn't advance past regionals, this is a great opportunity to get inspired for next year. And I'll tell you, every year my kids go to performances and they're like, oh, look at that costume, look at her hair. And all of a sudden, their creativity just gets sparked all over again. There is an award ceremony. It's a lot of fun and dancing and excitement. And I think award ceremony is one of the things that fuels you for the year after, because it's just the energy in there is amazing. And you want to have that excitement. And this is what gets kids going for the year after. All right, so a lot of adults want to know, when do I have to decide? And they get a little nervous about the timelines, and I want to make sure you understand what's expected of you and why we ask for teams so early. So we actually form teams in August and September. So for those of you considering coaches, you need to know in September that you're going to coach, because this is when we're going to form our teams. And coaches, I really want you, just like your students, to commit. Once you're in this, you have to stick it out through the whole time. And that could be through February, and for the last 3 years for me, it has been through May. This is, a year-long commitment. It could be 1 to 2 meetings a week, and definitely all day on competition days. So we form teams really early, and you're going to see why in just a second. So October and November are really for practicing spontaneous and finalizing those long-term ideas. You really want to get your ideas set so that in December and January, you can build your props and rehearse. The reason why we form teams so soon is that by February, you have your first competition, the regional competition. So you really need to get the team set and formed early so that you have, that 6 months to really build and develop and work through the problem. If you move on from regional competition, state competitions in April and world finals would be in May. So you can see that we need to have those teams formed early enough so that the students have enough time to really put into their solutions. So at this point, you might be looking for some more information. First thing, attend our information night. This will be in August. It's date to be decided, and I'll give you even more information, go over a lot of the things I went over today, and hopefully have some students there that can shed some light on the experience from their point of view. If you ever need anything, you can always contact me. I am the Millennium Middle School Odyssey of the Mind coordinator, and my email is on the screen. I am happy to answer questions to help. I did Odyssey of the Mind myself for 9 years as a kid. I've coached for 6. I've judged. I've done it all, and I can give you any information that you need. Ultimately, if you're curious about the program, though, check out the association websites. So the Odyssey of the Mind one, this is the same link I gave you earlier. Florida Odyssey of the Mind, and our region, Magic Region Odyssey of the Mind. I think you're going to find that they have a lot of information, some videos, a lot of good links, and this is a great place to start. Of course, if you need anything, shoot me an email. I will get right back to you. Thank you for considering coaching. We rely on our parent volunteers, and I look forward to meeting you and your students in August.